All right, after a scenery change and a wardrobe change, let's dive into some wide receivers. Corey, what do you got for wide receivers?
Tier 1, CeeDee Lamb. I know he's kind of in these contract, talks right now with Dallas, but I think it's gonna get worked out. CeeDee Lamb I is clear tier 1 for me. He was a monster last year, with Dak, and I think you're gonna see a lot of the same things this year, um, once CD hits the field. CeeDee Lamb is in my tier 1, as well as there's only one other guy in there, and that's Tyreek Hill.
Mhm.
Age is creeping up on Tyreek Hill, but I think he is so skilled and he's such a in an explosive offense that Tyreek Hill is just going to blow it up. He can run out of the backfield, he can catch deep balls, he can run short routes, and then he can take those to the house. I just think Tyreek Hill is a special talent, and these are, in my opinion, two of the top guys you really want to target in your if you're higher up on your draft order come draft day.
All right, so you're confident CeeDee Lamb is going to not only be playing, but playing with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes, I am. Very few times does any of these contract, issues not work out.
Yeah.
I think one that I can remember, and this is a while ago, is like Le'Veon Bell for the Pittsburgh Steelers sat out some games because of it. Jerry Jones, he's not going to let CD sit out. He's going to pay him the money, and CD will be fine.
And then you mentioned Tyreek Hill in a top 100 players, NFL players voted on by the players. You saw that Tyreek Hill came in at number one.
I did. Yeah, I saw that just I don't know whether it was this morning or last night or something, but yeah,
Yeah,
I saw that. Yeah, dude, he's so explosive. He is an awesome football player and he's so fun to watch.
and huge for fantasy football. Put can
Yep.
put up some big numbers.
Yeah. Next up in the tier 2, I have 3 wide receivers there. First one is clearly our favorite in Amon-Ra St. Brown, being a Lions fan. I do think Amon-Ra is probably the safest wide receiver in the draft, that you could take here. I mentioned earlier that the Lions only play 3 outdoor games, so the majority of their games are played indoors. And I think he's going to have a huge season. And I say he's the safest because you talk about CD with the contract issues. You have Tyreek Hill, who's getting a little bit older. You have Jamar Chase, who's also kind of having some contract issues as well, who hasn't been participating in practice. And then you have Justin Jefferson with a huge question mark. And so to me, Amon-Ra St. Brown is the safest wide receiver to take in this year's fantasy draft.
Sure.
Next would be Jamar Chase. Getting Joe Burrow back is going to be huge for Jamar Chase. He's a special talent out of LSU. Whenever Joe Burrow is there, Jamar Chase always puts up huge numbers. And so he stays in the tier 2. And then last thing I do have in the tier 2 is Justin Jefferson. To me, arguably he's the best wide receiver in football. There is some quarterback issues there. And now it could, I don't know if it can get worse. I don't know if JJ was going to play or not this year. But now we just found out today that he is out for the season. But I think Justin Jefferson's just going to have a massive target value this year. And he's just too good not to keep in that high top tier range.
Okay.
So those 3 round out the tier 2 raise phase for the wide receivers.
Okay.
In the last tier, I just have 2 wide receivers there because I think there's a little bit of a drop off after these 2 guys.
Okay.
To me, Garrett Wilson, I think he's finally going to show what he can really do on the football field, getting Aaron Rodgers for a full season. I think Garrett Wilson's going to have a huge year. I think he's extremely talented, and he also is going to get a boatload of targets. The other one is AJ Brown, who's just been massive in Philly with Jalen Hurts. They get the new OC in Philly as well, and I think he's really going to utilize AJ Brown throughout this year, and he's going to have another massive year. He's such a physical wide receiver.
All right. Any wide receivers, or well, let's start with any rookies maybe that might have an impact.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 that really stand out, and it's Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison. I think those 2 guys are very special talents. They're big body receivers, very explosive, can run good routes. And then Roma Dunze is very similar in that regard. Um, But, you're gonna find every year rookie wide receivers, there's gonna be some that just flash all the time. I think there's a number of guys who could be really special this year and moving forward, throughout the season.
Yeah, and Roma Dunze, who we've seen featured on Hard Knocks. In fact, last night's episode 2, he got a little bit of camera time, looking pretty good. But obviously, you got Keenan Allen and you got DJ Moore, certainly more higher targets than what he will. He
Yeah.
will. So. All right, and then any sleepers in the wide receiver field?
Um, I think like Debo Samuel, I don't know, you're not necessarily gonna call that a sleeper, but Brandon Ayuk still has not gotten his contract yet that I've heard. If he gets traded, I do think Debo Samuel could move up into that tier 3 or even tier 2 if he stays healthy all year. Um, I think he's a pretty special player there and a much needed player in San Francisco. Um, so I think he could be pretty good. There's other guys down the list. Jordan Addison. I just read today that he got carted off the field. That's going to be a big blow to Minnesota. Um, but I would say some deeper sleepers. Oh man, I really like Brian Thomas Jr. That he's in Jacksonville right now. I think he's having a pretty good camp. You look at T. Higgins. I think he's gonna have a bounce back year, having Joe Burrow back. I like Devontae Smith as well in Philadelphia. There's a number of receivers that you can get in the mid to later rounds that are going to really help and improve your roster.
Well, hey, one last question in the wide receiver field. For Detroit Lions homers who like to draft Lions, what
Yeah,
is JMO?
man, I think it's hard because you hear nothing but really good things about JMO right now in camp, and that he's just killing it. I read again today; he had an awesome day again today. It's hard to see, like, if he can stay healthy and if he's on the field, how explosive and how productive he could be. But unfortunately, he has not been on the field the first 2 years. And so I think the upside is there. I think JMO, there's a high chance, especially in the drafts around here, that he goes a little bit higher than he should. But that's just because, our Lions fans, we got to have a Lion every year. Um, but I could see JMO definitely having an outstanding year this year.
All right, so that's wide receivers.